The collections call came on a Tuesday morning. I apparently owed American Express $23,000 for luxury purchases I'd never made. My daughter-in-law Melissa's new designer wardrobe suddenly made sense, as did my missing mail. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Detroit's Palmer Woods neighborhood, enjoying my morning coffee and reading the newspaper. Yes, I still get the physical paper delivered. When my phone rang, the caller ID showed American Express, which was odd because I'd canceled my Amex card 5 years ago after my husband George passed. I'd simplified my finances down to one credit card and my checking account. "Mrs. Blackwood?" The voice on the other end was professional but stern. "This is American Express Collections Department. We need to discuss your account immediately." "I don't have an American Express account," I said calmly, though something cold was already settling in my stomach. "Ma'am, you opened this account 4 months ago. You currently have an outstanding balance of $23,000, and you've missed 3 consecutive payments. We need to arrange payment today to avoid legal action." $23,000. I set down my coffee cup carefully, my mind already shifting into the analytical mode that 30 years as a senior fraud investigator for a major national bank had trained into me. "I need you to send me all documentation related to this account," I said. "The application, all statements, and transaction records. And I need the address you've been sending statements to." "Ma'am, the statements have been paperless, going to your email address," the representative said. Then read off an email address I'd never heard before: dblackwood1945@gmail.com. Close to my actual email, but not mine. "That's not my email address," I said. "This is clearly a case of identity theft. Please freeze the account immediately and send all documentation to my actual address, which I'll verify through your security questions." After 20 minutes of security verification and providing my real address, I hung up and immediately went to my home office. If there was one American Express card, there were probably others. I pulled up the website for the free annual credit report and entered my information. What I saw made me physically ill. 17 credit cards had been opened in my name over the past 6 months. Total debt, $75,000. There were cards from stores I'd never shop at: Nordstrom, Saks Fifth Avenue, Tiffany and Company. There were multiple Visa and MasterCards from different banks. Even a Bergdorf Goodman card with a $15,000 balance. Every single one had been maxed out. I printed out everything and spread the papers across my dining room table, treating it like I'd treated hundreds of fraud cases during my career. The pattern emerged quickly. The cards had been opened systematically, 2 or 3 per month, starting 6 months ago, right after Melissa and my son Robert had moved back to Detroit temporarily, after Robert's business failed in Chicago. They'd been staying in our guest house, the converted garage apartment George and I had built for visiting family. The purchases told a story. The first charges were always small: $50 here, $100 there, to test if the cards were working. Then came the shopping sprees. Designer handbags from Nordstrom, jewelry from Tiffany, shoes from Bergdorf Goodman, electronics from Best Buy, and interestingly, many purchases were made at stores within a 5-mile radius of my house, during hours when I was at my weekly appointments: physical therapy on Mondays, book club on Wednesdays, church on Sundays. I thought about Melissa's transformation over the past few months. When they'd first arrived, she'd been wearing the same 3 outfits in rotation, clearly struggling financially, but lately she'd been sporting designer labels. "Robert's consulting business is picking up," she'd explained when I'd complimented her new Chanel bag. "We're finally getting back on our feet." That Chanel bag, I now saw from the credit card statement, had cost $5,800 and had been purchased with a Nordstrom card in my name. The missing mail made sense now too. For the past few months, I'd noticed I was getting less mail. "The post office is so unreliable these days," Melissa had said sympathetically when I'd mentioned it. "I barely get any mail at the guest house either." She'd even offered to check my mailbox for me when I was out, since she worked from home and was always there. How thoughtful of her. I needed more evidence before confronting anyone. My years in fraud investigation had taught me that criminals, especially desperate ones, rarely confess without overwhelming proof. They deny, deflect, and destroy evidence if given the chance. I called my former colleague, James Morrison, who still worked in bank security. "Dorothy," he said warmly, "how's retirement treating you?" "Not as quietly as I'd hoped," I replied. "James, I need a favor. I've got a case of identity theft, and I need to trace some transactions." Oh no, Dorothy, how bad? 17 cards. 75,000. He whistled low. Send me what you have. I'll see what I can find. While waiting for James to get back to me, I installed a security camera system I'd been meaning to put up anyway. One that covered the mailbox, front door, and driveway. I also put a lock on my mailbox and held my mail at the post office, claiming I was having issues with mail theft in the neighborhood. 3 days later, James called back. Dorothy, you're not going to like this. The IP address used to apply for these cards traces back to your property. Specifically, to your guest house Wi-Fi network. My guest house, where Melissa spent all day working from home on her supposed consulting business. There's more, James continued. Several of the applications listed employment at Blackwood Consulting with an income of $50,000 annually. That's not your consulting firm, is it? I don't have a consulting firm, I said. I'm a retired fraud investigator. Well, someone's been very creative with your employment history. They've also been intercepting the activation calls. The phone number on file for most of these cards isn't your main line. It's a different number that forwards to a cell phone registered to, hold on, M. Patterson. Melissa Patterson, her maiden name. I spent the next week gathering everything I needed. Security footage from my new cameras showed Melissa checking my mailbox daily, even when she'd told me there was no mail. I had James's technical analysis. I had the credit reports, the fraudulent applications, the transaction records showing purchases delivered to addresses associated with Melissa and Robert. I also did something else. I applied for a small personal loan from my own bank, where I'd been a customer for 40 years. As expected, I was denied due to my destroyed credit. I kept that denial letter as evidence of the real harm done. On Sunday evening, I invited Robert and Melissa for dinner. They came over from the guest house, Melissa wearing a new designer dress I recognized from the Saks Fifth Avenue statement. Mom, you look tired, Robert said with genuine concern. He'd always been a good son if somewhat naive about people, especially his wife. I've had a stressful week, I said, serving the pot roast I'd made, their favorite. I've been dealing with some financial issues. Oh no, Melissa said, her face a mask of concern. Is everything okay? Do you need help managing your finances? I know at your age it can be overwhelming. At my age, I was 78, but my mind was sharper than ever. Actually, Melissa, I think you've been helping yourself to my finances quite enough. The silence was deafening. Robert looked confused. Melissa went pale but tried to recover. I don't understand what you mean, she said. I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. 17 credit cards. $75,000 in debt. All opened using my social security number, my information, from IP addresses traced to the guest house. Scene 5. The unraveling. Robert grabbed the folder, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally horror, as he read through the evidence. This has to be a mistake, he said weakly. Identity theft is common. It could be anyone. It could be, I agreed. Except the thief knew my mother's maiden name, my previous addresses, my employment history, and had access to my mail. The thief also made purchases that were delivered to this address and the guest house. The thief used a phone number registered to M. Patterson. Melissa stood up. This is ridiculous. You're accusing me based on circumstantial. Sit down, I said, my voice carrying the authority of 3 decades of confronting criminals. I haven't called the police yet, but I will. She sat. Robert was staring at his wife. Melissa, tell me you didn't do this. Tell me you didn't steal from my mother. Her facade cracked. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. We lost everything in Chicago. Everything. We were living in your mother's garage like failures. You couldn't provide. Your business was a disaster, and she just sits here in this big house with all her money. So you stole it? Robert's voice was hollow. You committed fraud? You destroyed her credit? I was going to pay it back, Melissa said desperately. Once Robert's business recovered, I was going to pay it all back. It was just temporary, just to get us through. You bought a Chanel bag, I said quietly. That's not getting through tough times. That's greed. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out another folder. You're going to sign this confession, acknowledging the fraud. You're going to agree to a payment plan to reimburse every penny, with interest. You're going to close every fraudulent account and work with the credit bureaus to clear my name. And if I don't? Melissa asked, trying for defiance but achieving only desperation. Then I file charges. Identity theft, mail fraud, Wire fraud, these are federal crimes, Melissa. With the amount involved and the evidence I have, you're looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Robert put his head in his hands. Mom, please, there has to be another way. There is, I said. This way, the way where she takes responsibility and makes restitution. But Robert, you need to understand something. She didn't just steal money. She destroyed my credit, my reputation, my peace of mind. She violated my trust in the worst possible way. Melissa was crying now, the designer makeup running down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't stand being poor again. I grew up with nothing, and when we had money in Chicago, I thought I'd finally escape that. When we lost it all. That's an explanation, not an excuse, I said. Plenty of people grow up poor without becoming criminals. I pushed the confession toward her. Sign it. Then you're going to call every credit card company and confession to the fraud. I'll be listening to every call. Then tomorrow you're returning every single item you can return. What can't be returned will be sold, and the money will go toward restitution. She signed with shaking hands. The next 3 days were brutal. Melissa had to call 17 credit card companies and admit to fraud. Some wanted to press charges anyway, but I managed to negotiate, using my industry connections and reputation. Every call was humiliating for her, which was partly the point. She needed to feel the weight of what she'd done. We spent a full day returning items to stores. Some managers recognized Melissa as a frequent customer and were shocked to learn everything had been purchased with stolen credit. The Chanel bag, the designer clothes, the jewelry, everything that could be returned was returned. What couldn't be returned was photographed and listed for sale online. Robert was devastated. He moved back into the main house while Melissa stayed in the guest house alone. I don't know if I can forgive this, he told me one evening. She lied to me every day. Every time she came home with something new, she told me business was good, that she'd gotten a consulting client. It was all lies. People do desperate things when they're desperate, I said, though I wasn't feeling particularly forgiving myself. But they also make choices. She made hers. The credit repair process took months. Even with Melissa's confession and cooperation, bureaucracy moved slowly. My credit score, which had been 80/10, wouldn't fully recover for years. The personal loan I'd been denied for was a constant reminder of the practical impact of her crimes. 6 months later, the immediate crisis had passed. All fraudulent accounts were closed, and the credit bureaus had added fraud alerts to my files. Melissa had gotten a real job, 2 actually, working retail during the day and waitressing at night to pay restitution. She'd sold her designer items, her car, everything of value. She'd paid back $20,000 so far, with $55,000 plus interest still to go. Robert filed for divorce. He couldn't get past the betrayal, not just the theft, but the months of lies. She looked you in the eye every day, Mom. She ate at your table, lived on your property, and stole from you. If she could do that to you, what else is she capable of? I received a letter from Melissa after the divorce was finalized. She was moving back to Chicago, still working to pay me back. The letter was long, full of apologies and explanations about her childhood poverty, her fear of returning to it, her shame at their business failure. I know you'll never forgive me, she wrote, but I want you to know that this has changed me. I've started therapy to understand why I did something so terrible to someone who only showed me kindness. I will pay back every penny, even if it takes me the rest of my life, not because of the legal agreement, but because it's the only way I can live with myself. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give yet. Maybe never. But I did appreciate that she was trying to make things right, even if she never could fully. Robert still lives in Detroit, but not in my guest house. He got his own apartment, rebuilt his business, and slowly rebuilt his life. We have dinner every Sunday, and we don't talk about Melissa. The guest house stands empty now. I can't bring myself to rent it to anyone else. Trust, once broken, leaves scars that never fully heal. My credit has mostly recovered, thanks to my diligent work and industry connections. But I still check it obsessively, still lock my mailbox, still shred every piece of mail. Some habits born from trauma never leave you. The security cameras remain active, recording everything. My former colleagues in bank fraud investigation tell me I did everything right, that I handled it perfectly, but it doesn't feel perfect. It feels like a family destroyed by greed and desperation. Last week I received a restitution check from Melissa. Her monthly payment, never late, always with a small note. Payment 18 of many more. Still sorry. She's paid back $35,000 now. At this rate, it will take her another 4 years to pay it all back. I cash the checks, add the money to a fund I've created for financial fraud victims. Something good should come from all this pain. The collections call came on a Tuesday morning. I apparently owed American Express $23,000 for luxury purchases I'd never made. My daughter-in-law Melissa's new designer wardrobe suddenly made sense, as did my missing mail. In the end, she got what she'd always wanted: expensive things, designer labels, the appearance of wealth. But she lost what she'd actually had: a family, a home, a husband who loved her, and a mother-in-law who would have helped her if she'd just asked. The irony is that if she'd come to me honestly about their financial struggles, I would have helped. I had the means, and they were family. But she chose theft over trust, deception over honesty, and in doing so, she destroyed not just my credit, but any credit she might have had as a member of our family. Some debts can be repaid with money, others never can be.